A very good evening. You're watching the Super Saturday debate with me, Akanksha Swaroop. In fact, we have some breaking inputs before we deep dive into the debate. Let's bring you those breaking inputs coming in from Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, we are learning that PDP chief Mehbooba Mufti has expressed solidarity with Hassan Nasrallah's death. She has cancelled tomorrow's poll campaign. Remember, the polling in Jammu and Kashmir is currently on, and in fact, Mehbooba Mufti has gone on to say that I stand with the martyrs of Lebanon and Gaza, especially Hassan Nasrallah. She's cancelled her campaign, which is in solidarity with Hassan Nasrallah and Hezbollah. Remember, Hassan Nasrallah is the chief of Hezbollah. He has been killed in pre-dawn strikes that were conducted on Saturday by Israel. Ishan Wani joins me on the phone line with more inputs. Ishan, if you could share with us the sentiment and what explains it as far as PDP and Mehbooba Mufti's decision is concerned.
Well, Akansha, Mehbooba has been tweeting about Gaza from a very long time, since the Israeli forces started to, pound Gaza and those areas where they believe that their targets are hiding. And since then, Mehbooba has been expressing solidarity. But it's an election time, and Mehbooba and her party needs, the president of the party. But she has now decided to cancel her program for tomorrow. She was supposed to address certain rallies, but now that has been postponed in solidarity with what has happened, and particularly Hassan Nasrallah, given the fact that the sort of bombardment that took place in Lebanon. Mehbooba has expressed her solidarity with the people in Gaza and Lebanon. It's not just Mehbooba. The Member of Parliament from Srinagar of the National Conference, Aga Ruhullah, has also cancelled and called off his campaigning for the party. He's one of the popular faces at the moment for the party and star campaigners for them. And he has also cancelled, given the fact that what has happened in, Gaza and the bombing in Lebanon and Hassan Nasrallah episode. So yes, there are two politicians who have now decided to cancel and call off their, visits and campaigning tomorrow. Let's see that what other political parties do.
Absolutely, we'll have to see how this in fact pans out politically in India, especially in Jammu and Kashmir. Many thanks to you, Ishan. And with that, let's now quickly deep dive into our debate. Amid the ongoing conflict in Middle East, Hezbollah has confirmed that its leader and one of its founders, Hassan Nasrallah, was killed in an Israeli airstrike in Beirut on Saturday. Ali Kharki, the commander of Hezbollah's southern front, and additional Hezbollah commanders were also killed in the massive airstrike in Beirut's southern suburb. Hezbollah has vowed to continue what they call the holy war against the enemy and in support of Palestine. This recent escalation of violence between Israel and Hezbollah after the multiple pager explosions targeting Hezbollah members has seen the death of 700 Lebanese citizens, with thousands of people becoming homeless. Meanwhile, the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has issued a statement on the killing of Nasrallah, saying it will only further strengthen their resistance. Raising the question, will Iran also opt for an all-out escalation against Israel? And with Hezbollah still possessing significant military capabilities, is it actually the end of Hezbollah? That's a big question we'll be probing. Is the Middle East on the break?
Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of the terrorist army Hezbollah, was killed by Israel Defense Forces as of last night. Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah will no longer be able to terrorize the world.
זה לא סוף ארגז הכלים, זה צריך להיות מאוד ברור. יש עוד כלים קדימה ללכת, והמסר הוא מסר פשוט, מי שמאיים על אזרחי מדינת ישראל נדע להגיע בצפון, בדרום, גם במקומות יותר רחוקים.
Let me introduce our esteemed panelists today. I'm joined in by Edward P. Joseph, who's a senior fellow at SAIS Foreign Policy Institute. I'm also joined in by Mohammad Najib, who is a renowned Palestinian journalist and a defense expert as well. Also joined in by Professor Brahmachalani, who's a strategic affairs expert. Many thanks to you, gentlemen. Edward, if I may begin with you first. First of all, do you see the killing of Hassan Nasrallah as a watershed moment in this entire conflict that we've been seeing panning out in the last 11 months?
Great to be with you and the other panelists and Akanksha. And potentially, of course, it is a watershed moment. And we see that with some of the reaction that is being reported here in the United States, in Lebanon itself, and in Syria, in neighboring Syria. There are reports that some Lebanese and some Syrians are celebrating the death of Nasrallah. And while, of course, others will be very angry and act and voice solidarity with Hezbollah, determination, and of course we know that. So I'm not trying to say there's not that as well. But the fact that you have some public display, it's being reported here by reliable news organizations, the New York Times, it suggests that Lebanese and some in Syria themselves perceive this as potentially a turning point. Now, is that a guarantee? Will it lead to necessarily to some new and more stable and hopefully peaceful chapter in the lives of Lebanese and Israelis, Palestinians? That remains to be seen. Of course, we do not know what the reaction will be of Hezbollah. We don't know who will emerge in the leadership. We do not know exactly how Iran will respond. So those questions remain, of course, and so much remains in the balance with that. But this is, yes, a dramatic step, particularly in the way that it has come with a progression of steps against Hezbollah that Hezbollah has not been able to counter in any effective way. So it's also that this comes at a time of progression when other key leaders of Hezbollah have been eliminated, suggesting that Israel has excellent intelligence. And what do we mean when we say intelligence? It's very important to remember that. Intelligence means largely informants. That's what it means. It means those who are present themselves as members of Hezbollah who somehow report this information back to the Israelis. Same as in the case with Iran, with the strike on Hamas leader Haniya in Iran itself. So this is the context in which this takes place, Akanksha, and yes, potentially it's a turning point, but there's no guarantee. Please.
Professor Brahmachalani, if I could bring you in, how do you weigh in on the complex dilemma that is currently being faced by the Iranian regime? So far, we've seen them handle the entire situation with tremendous patience, but how complex and how difficult is the current situation for Iran in terms of a possible retaliation? Can it afford a retaliation at the moment?
That's a good question, Akanksha. Iran is facing a dilemma. It has to save its face, yet it cannot risk an open war with Israel. So how does it respond? For example, when the Israelis assassinated the Hamas political chief on July 31st in Tehran, his name was Mr. Haniyeh, the Israelis expected Iran to retaliate. And for days on end, the Israelis were preparing for Iran's retaliation, which never came. Now, Israel has launched an offensive against Hezbollah. So far, it's been airstrikes. Obviously, these airstrikes are designed to soften up the targets before the ground offensive begins. And so far, Iran has just watched the situation. It has allowed Hezbollah to take the blows without responding. To what extent can Iran respond? That's, again, a difficult issue for Iran because it would like to respond without getting locked in open combat with Israel? Can it retaliate in a way that is below the threshold of open conflict? That remains an open question.
Mohammed Najib, the question that's also being posed right now to Israel is that whatever actions that are currently being taken by Israel, are they in contravention of the Geneva Convention? Because remember, the use of bunker busters, those precise munitions, is supposed to be in contravention of the Geneva Convention, because you cannot use those munitions in any densely populated region. But Israel's defense is that it is Lebanon which has been flouting the UNSC Resolution 1701. I'd like your thoughts.
Yes, it violated the convention, but also Hezbollah hid among the civilians and the populations. And it was clear during the recent Israeli airstrike against Hezbollah leaders in Lebanon during the past few weeks and months that some civilians have been killed. But also Hezbollah is hiding under the buildings where civilians based, and it is impossible to conduct those attacks and those strikes without fall of civilian casualties.
Edward, I'd like to bring you in on this UNSC resolution. Remember, it's very crucial at this time, because it is this very resolution that France and the United States have been referring to bring in a ceasefire deal. And that's why has it failed to be implemented, and can it even offer any kind of hope going forward from here on for this conflict, which is also being viewed from the prism of the past Lebanon-Israel conflict of 2000 and 2006?
Yes, it's a great question, and it remains really the concept of Resolution 1701 remains the solution. It's the logical solution, and everyone knows that and understands that. And even though the resolution itself, we shouldn't be under any illusion that this resolution itself, the parameters of it, would somehow be accepted and revised without some contextual changes. But the concept is very simple. To achieve stability and peace, so that there's not this recurrence of violence that causes this tragedy, there has to be a buffer zone. This is not some concept that is not unknown. It's known in conflicts around the world. You separate the parties, the belligerent parties. That's the logical solution, and that was the logic of Resolution 1701, which came at the end of the last fighting, serious confrontation before this fighting, which began on October 8th. We should remember when Hezbollah joined in after the horrific surprise attacks by Hamas on Israeli civilians, primarily civilians. And so 1701, the concept was very simple. Both sides withdraw and create a buffer zone in which Hezbollah would be replaced by who? By the sovereign state of Lebanon, not this separate state of Hezbollah that operates as a sovereign Iran-supported actor undermining Lebanese sovereignty, but by the Lebanese army itself, not Israel, the Lebanese army. And also there would be the UN peacekeepers, UNIFIL, which were meant to expand in size and work alongside the Lebanese army, but only with the permission and coordination of the Lebanese army. So 1701 was all about respecting Lebanese sovereignty over Lebanon's territory. That was the concept, and that remains here truly the way to have stability in this region. But you have an actor in Iran that doesn't want that and doesn't want stability and wants to utilize proxies like Hezbollah to undermine the sovereignty of neighbors. And for example, this does not only stop at Lebanon, this is in Syria as well, in which the democratic uprising that we saw that began in the Arab Spring was put down brutally by the Assad regime with the backing of Iran, killing as many as 500,000 people using chemical weapons. And so this is the Iran prescription. What they call axis of resistance is a very destabilizing axis. Please.
Mohammed Najib, I want to take a question from Professor Chelani as well, but Professor, I'd like to come in for your closing thoughts. But Mohammed Ajib, there are blames being placed on Israel for flouting the UNSC resolution. But, Israel in its defense has been very vehemently maintaining that Hezbollah was never under this resolution allowed to be a part of all those forces. As Edward has also pointed out, UNIFIL has been a major part on ground. But we've seen how Hezbollah has been expanding its arsenal. So in terms of the resolution, hasn't Hezbollah been flouting the entire resolution? What can the international society do when Iran continues to flout the international norms?
Hezbollah was building its military arsenal since the 2006 war right now, and all the time formed a threat to Israel by the military arsenal that he has, and it was a matter of time the war to erupt between Israel and Hezbollah. But this time, since 8 October, Hezbollah launched an attrition war against Israel to show support for Hamas, to decrease the Israeli pressure on Hamas in Gaza, and that's the reason when he forced the Israeli northern region citizens to displace and not to be allowed to go back to their areas. And Israel was trying all the time to deter Hezbollah, to enable its citizens to go to Kiryat Shimona and to northern Galilee. But Hezbollah was escalating and firing rockets toward Israel. And the war, it was between Israel and Hamas. But Hezbollah pushed itself as Iran wants to fight Israel through its proxies. And Hezbollah is a big play card for Iran, so he doesn't want to sacrifice Hezbollah, but he didn't expect that Israel will go after and kill the military leaders. The top military leaders of Hezbollah have been killed during the past month, and was the huge development, the murder and the liquidation of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah yesterday.
Professor Chelani, how relevant is Resolution 1701 in ending the current hostilities between Israel and Lebanon? Also, is it fair to see this current conflict solely from the prism of what happened on October 7th, or is this also dependent on the historical context?
First, it's not an issue about international law. Law is being flouted by all sides. International law, in any case, is powerful against the powerless, but powerless against the powerful. That has long been true in human history. The issue is this, and I think it goes back to the question that you raised in this discussion. Is Israel's killing of Nasrallah a mortal blow to Hezbollah, or will Hezbollah recover from this blow? Now, if you look at the history of militant movements of the last 25 years, it shows that assassinated leaders are easily replaced with new leaders who are often more radicalized leaders from militant ranks. For example, when Israel assassinated Hamas's political chief, Haniyeh, on July 31st in Tehran, Hamas took just a few days to name Yahya Sinwar as its new political chief. And now the war in Gaza is nearing 1 year. In a few days, it'll complete 1 year. But as the Israeli military acknowledges, the Israeli forces are still meeting organized Hamas resistance in Gaza. Hamas is still able to recruit new fighters, and Hezbollah, we should not forget, is a far stronger, a far more formidable force than Hamas. And in fact, assassinations of leaders bring only near-term success, but they foster longer-term threats by stoking grassroots anger and unifying rival factions. So instead of weakening a movement, a leadership assassination tends to strengthen that organization of movement. So we should not reach this conclusion that Nasrallah's killing is a mortal blow to Hezbollah. The Hezbollah actually has shown over the last many years its ability to recover from major losses. For example, in 2006, the Israel-Hezbollah war ended in a stalemate. But that stalemate was seen in much of the Arab world as Hezbollah's victory over against a more powerful enemy. So I think that Hezbollah could still bounce back, and I think Nasrallah can be replaced with another leader. So I don't think this really means that Hezbollah's threat to Israel is going to disappear.
Absolutely not. But I'm sure that the kind of momentum that Israel has gained in the past few days and what we've seen, it doesn't seem like that deterrence is going to be held back in any form. But many thanks to you, gentlemen. It was a pleasure to have you here on the Super Saturday Debate with some very precious insights.